but I just, later on I just said that he did. Did you also tell the police officer that you thought the shirt was a short-sleeved shirt? I don't remember. Do you remember what color pants the man was wearing? I think they were the same color, kind of gray. Now, the other man, not the man carrying the TV, but the man carrying the other package, did you give a description of him to the police? No, sir. You didn't describe him as being a male white in his late 40s. Do you remember telling the police officer that? I don't remember telling him that. Do you remember telling the police officer that he was about 5'10" and very slender? Yes, that is what I said about one of them. Well, he's talking about the other man with the package, not the man with the TV. Do you remember telling the police officer that the man with the package, not the TV, was about 5'10" and very slender? Yes, I said that. Okay, plaintiff's attorney, Mr. Bach, B-A-C-H. Defense attorney, Mr. Turner, T-U-R-N-E-R. Okay, this is a 160, 4 voice, 5 minutes. Metropolitan Hospital, initial caps, Metropolitan Hospital. Non-psychotic.
Is there a hyphen in that?
You know what, you should probably look it up because it may be incorrectly typed up in here. They've got it one word, but I'd still look it up. Polaroid, as in Polaroid camera, that's initial cap. P-O-L-A-R-O-I-D. Miss Tracy, T-R-A-C-Y. Miss Tracy. Okay? $160 starts with question by plaintiff's attorney. While you were at the Metropolitan Hospital, you didn't receive any treatment for a mental condition, did you, Miss Tracy? What they call group therapy. What type of, how many people were in the groups approximately? About 10, I guess. In the course of this group therapy, did they talk to you at all about your drinking problem? It was a discussion group and people discussed whatever they wanted to discuss. While you were at the hospital, you snuck away a couple of times to go down to a local tavern and get drunk. Didn't you, Miss Tracy? They said that I did. I wasn't drunk, but I did leave the grounds and I wasn't supposed to, and I had had something to drink. What is this they said that you did, and what is it that they said that you did? Wait a minute, I will object to that question as being ambiguous, Your Honor. Sustained. All right. When you said that they said you did, you mean they said you went down to the tavern and were drunk? No. They said that I had gone off the grounds. They knew that I had gone, but you deny that you went off on drunks. I deny that I got drunk when I went off the grounds. While you were at Metropolitan, did any of the doctors in discussing your case with you tell you that one of your big problems was that you were a chronic liar, and You always indulged in explanations after you lied to them at the hospital. Nobody ever mentioned to me my lying to them, and to the best of my knowledge, I didn't tell them anything that wasn't true. May we approach the bench a moment, Your Honor? While you were at the hospital, isn't it true that you consistently broke a great many of the rules there? The only rule that I know of that I broke was going off the grounds. Did they give you any medication other than aspirin while you were there, Miss Tracy? Not that I can recall. And you testified on direct that you were discharged as non-psychotic, I believe you put it. Yes, that is, Your Honor, again, I will object to that as calling for a conclusion of this witness as to whether she was non-psychotic. Well, it's been asked and answered, I think, anyway. She testified to that. I will sustain the objection. Let's talk about these naked pictures of you. How many were there? 3. Where did you say you got those pictures after you killed him? I finally found them in the cabinet on the right-hand side of the desk. You searched around for them, did you? Yes, I did. I didn't know where he kept them. Where did you search? In what general area? I looked every place I could think of. At that time, what type of places did you think of? I looked in the drawers in the desk and the drawers in the cabinet on the other side of the living room. I think I looked in the drawers of the bedroom. At the time, I didn't know where the key to the cabinet was, and that was the last place I looked. When I found them, where did you find the keys to the cabinet? They were on the key ring. That was on the bar. Was the cabinet the last place you thought of or the last place you looked? I didn't have to look anymore after I found them. Did you, after looking through all the drawers, I understand, then you thought of the cabinet, the locked cabinet? I had tried the cabinet and it was locked, and I looked every place else, and when I didn't find it, I assumed that they were in the cabinet. You logically assumed, after eliminating these other places, that it might logically be in the cabinet. Is that right? Yes. And then you thought to yourself, where would the key to the cabinet be? Is that correct? Yes. And you thought it would probably be on the key ring. Is that true? I tried all of the keys that I found, and one of them fit. And the key ring was on the bar, you say? Yes. When you opened the cabinet, where were the nude pictures in the cabinet? They were on the bottom. What type of, in a book? What type of a cabinet is this? Can you describe it to the jury? It's just a cabinet. How big is it? What does it look like? We haven't seen it. I guess the door is about this wide. The witness is indicating about 1.5 feet. 2 feet, Your Honor. About 18 inches. About how high is it, would you say? .140 four-voice test. We are continuing in cross-examination by plaintiff's attorney, Mr. Bach, B-A-C-H. Defense attorney, Mr. Turner, T-U-R-N-E-R. Okay? And Polaroid, we never got to that one, but we are this time. Polaroid, P-O-L-A-R-O-I-D. Miss Tracy, T-R-A-C-Y. Cabinet. Mr. Stricker, S-T-R-I-C-K-E-R. Bedroom. Mr. Stricker. Okay, ready? Starts with question by plaintiff's attorney, 140. About how high high is it, would you say, just approximately, so we will have some idea? It's the height of the desk, which is standard desk height, I assume. This cabinet is in the desk itself. The desk is built into the office. Does this cabinet show up in one of the color slides that were shown? If you can remember, I believe it does. It shows the drawer area, and the other side, if I am not mistaken, are there shelves in the cabinet at all? As nearly as I can recall, there aren't. As far as you recall, it's just a space, yes. What was in the cabinet at that time when you found these pictures? I don't know what else was in it. I don't recall what else was in it. The pictures were found in a book, you say? Yes, a small book that came with this Polaroid camera when he got it. And the book was that lying on the floor of the floor of the cabinet. Is that correct? Yes. Was it lying flat on the floor, or was it standing up? Or what is your recollection? As nearly as I can recall, it was lying flat on the floor. And did you have to pick up some things up to get at it? Were there other books on top of it? It was on top. It was what? As nearly as I can recall, it was on top of whatever it was sitting on. If it was sitting on anything, I don't know. In other words, Miss Tracy, would it be fair to say that when you opened the cabinet, you didn't have to take a bunch of things out and dig down to the bottom to find the book? No. As far as you can recall, the book was right there where you could pick it up and look through it. Is that correct? That is right. You don't recall anything else being in the cabinet, or I believe there were other things in the cabinet, but I couldn't say what they were. You don't. Do you have any idea of what else was in the cabinet? Was there anything unusual in the cabinet? Not that I recall. I have already asked this and answered it, but in all fairness to you, Miss Tracy, just once more, think very, very clearly and tell the jury if there was anything else unusual that you noticed in the cabinet. Anything unusual? What do you mean by unusual? Well, just anything that was in the cabinet. You opened the cabinet, didn't you? Yes. And you found the book? Yes. Tell us if there was anything else in that cabinet, if that is your testimony. The only other thing I can recall, it is not unusual. They kept it in there that I knew. And that was the saved quarters and dimes and things out of his change, and he put it in a bottle. That was in there. That is what I was getting at. You asked me if anything unusual. I will object to that as being argumentative by counsel, Your Honor. Well, all right, the remark will be stricken. And you burned these pictures? Yes, I did. Where did you burn the pictures? In the fireplace. In the fireplace of Mr. Stricker's house, or the fireplace of your mother's house. In the fireplace of his house. I didn't go over to my mother's house that night. No one saw you burn the photographs? No, sir. Did you describe on your direct examination when Mr. Turner was asking you questions exactly where this trap door was located? I said where the trap door was located, but I don't recall whether it was when I was talking to you or when I was talking to Mr. Turner. Could you tell us now exactly where it was? I think you referred to it in passing at one time as being in the wardrobe in the bedroom. Yes, on the far end. This would be in Amos's bedroom. Is that correct? That is correct. There is only one closet or wardrobe in that bedroom? Yes. Okay, so Amos, I don't think I gave you that one. That's spelled A-M-O-S. What does it take to shake the apathy and the complacency of the leaders of our nation and those of other nations and make them realize that drug abuse has become a global problem, undermining the institutions of all nations and destroying the health of citizens throughout the world? What does it take before leaders the world over will act in a concerted manner to wage war on drug trafficking and drug abuse? We have all heard recent reports that indicate the magnitude of the global drug problem. These reports on the extent of worldwide narcotics trafficking and drug abuse obviously depict only the very tip of the drug problem. The data in these reports cannot account for those illicit drugs that escape detection by law enforcement officials. These statistics cannot take into account the unknown number of abusers who are not reported as drug addicts. The reports cannot include those who are not registered in drug treatment centers or those who are physically and mentally dependent upon different types of drugs or those who are cross-addicted to pills and alcohol. The data does, however, reflect what we all know. The data reflects that narcotics trafficking is a worldwide multi-billion-dollar business that knows no boundaries and no political ideologies or competing economic systems, and that it adversely affects the health and general well-being of all of our citizens. To wage war on the drug problem, the nations of the world must decide to submerge their competing political and economic differences. The world cannot long endure the victories by international drug traffickers, the many international criminal syndicates, the independent entrepreneurs, and the so-called respectable citizens whose sophisticated and well-financed business operations reach into every corner of our societies. Such illicit business activities undermine our institutions, jeopardize the health of our citizens, and destroy the youth of our society. No nation or its citizens are immune to this devastation. Okay, one more time on this one. The 29th session of the United Nations Commission on Narcotic Drugs recently completed its deliberations in Vienna, Austria. Although I could not attend the Commission's 29th session, I presented a printed statement on the global dimensions of narcotics trafficking and drug abuse that was distributed to the delegates attending the session. I discussed the apathy toward combating drug abuse, the urgency for a comprehensive, coordinated global drug strategy, the low level of funding contributions to the United Nations Fund for Drug Abuse Control, and the need for the UN to consolidate its diverse drug programs, policies, and organizations into a single, highly visible anti-narcotics commission or committee. Given the global dimensions of drug trafficking and drug abuse, an epidemic that has reached into the hundreds of billions of dollars in drug trafficking and that has caused misery for unknown millions of individuals who are dependent upon or addicted to illegal drugs. I am appalled that leaders throughout the world, including many in our nation, are unwilling to admit or choose to not to admit the existence of this problem. And given that narcotics trafficking and drug abuse is a crisis that is on a comparable level with the international energy crisis, the fragile situation in the Mideast, and the uncertainty of the international economy, I am appalled that the drug problem has received such a low priority in our domestic agendas and international forums. What does it take to shake the apathy and the complacency of the leaders of our nation and those of other nations and make them realize that drug abuse has become a global problem, undermining the institutions of all nations and destroying the health of citizens throughout the world? What does it take before leaders the world over will act in a concerted manner to wage war on drug trafficking and drug abuse? We have all heard recent reports that indicate the magnitude of the global drug problem. These reports on the extent of worldwide narcotics trafficking and drug abuse obviously depict only the very tip of the drug problem. The data in these reports cannot account for those illicit drugs that escape detection by law enforcement officials. These statistics cannot take into account the unknown number of abusers who are not reported as drug addicts. The reports cannot include those who are not registered in drug treatment centers or those who are physically and mentally dependent upon different types of drugs or those who are cross-addicted to pills and alcohol. The data does, however, reflect what we all know. Now, the data reflects that narcotics trafficking is a worldwide multi-billion-dollar business that knows no boundaries and no political ideologies or competing economic systems, and that it adversely affects the health and general well-being of all of our citizens. To wage war on the drug problem, the nation of the world must decide to submerge their competing political and economic differences. The world cannot long endure the victories by international drug traffickers, the many international criminal syndicates, the independent entrepreneurs, and the so-called respectable citizens whose sophisticated and well-financed business operations reach into every corner of our societies. Such illicit business activities undermine our institutions, jeopardize the health of our citizens, and destroy the youth of our society. No nation or its citizens are immune to this devastation. As a whole, Americans are better off today than they were 20 years ago, and to some degree, most of them enjoy a higher standard of living because they have benefited from government programs. That is not to say that all government programs should be spared the budget axe. We should indeed put our fiscal